Thank you for coming tonight to gather with us despite the ongoing fires and terrible shootings. I know you join all of us in sympathy with the victims of these disasters.
The fact that tonight's program will go on as planned is a statement that we as a people, as Californians, are strong enough to endure and surmount any setback. And tonight, yeah, right? And tonight, we have much to celebrate, including we the people voting our values and achieving civil liberties victories across America for voting rights, criminal justice reform, and more.
Yeah. Though today we also mourn the loss earlier this month of Ramona Ripston, who led the ACLU of California for nearly 40 years. She had perfect pitch in naming injustice. We vow to continue to build on Ramona's legacy and are planning a public memorial service to honor her in January. Tonight, we honor those who carry her torch.
And that torch is blazing. The ACLU of Southern California is 95 this year, and I am pleased to report that we are stronger than ever.
That strength comes from people like you, our supporters. Thank you on behalf of the staff and boards of the ACLU, the Bill of Rights, and those whose rights your generosity helps to protect.
No event like this can happen without the work of many people. Thank you to the staff and volunteers behind the Bill of Rights dinner, with special thanks to Christian Labano and Vicki Fox, and our dinner chairs, Nichelle Carr and Stacey Horth-Newbert. We have the finest staff anywhere, and I'd like them to stand so we can show our appreciation for the work they do. We are also pleased to acknowledge our servers from Unite Here, Local 11.
These are especially challenging times for America, and the ACLU stands on the front lines in all 50 states to meet those challenges. Tonight we recognize individuals who have used their voices to stand for justice with us.
Now, in honor of Veterans Day, please welcome the ACLU's Senior Staff Attorney and Director of Immigrant Rights, Jenny Pascarella, and actor, activist, and veteran, Mike Farrell.
Today is Veterans Day, when we honor the veterans and victims of war. Would all those who are in the room who are veterans please stand? Thank you for your service to our country.
Whether fighting in war or preserving the peace, America's veterans keep the promise of democracy, yet democracy does not always keep its promise to its veterans. Many of them are in distress. Tragically, it's reported that we lose 20 veterans every day to suicide. According to the Census Bureau, there are nearly 22 million Americans living today. Nearly 40,000 of them are there, and homeless, 6,000 in Los Angeles alone. Just a few years ago, the ACLU of Southern California won a historic settlement against the Veterans Administration. The VA had taken land in Westwood that was specifically deeded to veterans for housing, and instead leased it to private businesses for shops and tennis courts. The ACLU got it back.
And now the ACLU is taking the lead in another battle for veterans' rights, the rights of immigrants who serve in our military. Watch this video to see what we mean.
Well, I like being in the Army because it fit me.
I joined the Marine Corps because I really wanted to fight for the country. I wanted to be a soldier and, commando.
I wanted to join the military, one, to get out of my neighborhood. It was very violent, racial, a lot of drugs and alcohol. And I wanted to get away from that.
I love the Marines. I felt like I was part of something, and I like that. I like that a lot. It gave me a structure. It gave me a place in the country.
When all this happened, it was a shock because I always thought I was an American.
Getting deported was a little surprising. My military background seemed to have been ignored.
I thought that was a very rare case. I figured, people don't get deported if you're a veteran. You don't do that. I realized that there are hundreds of veterans all over the world, and a lot of them are homeless, living in very destitute situation and not being able to visit the country that they love, that we love.
When they discharged me and people told me that ICE is coming for me while I was still in the military, that was like the first time I think that I felt like I wasn't valued. I actually did not know anything about ACLU, but you guys literally saved me from hell. Like, you got me from hell and then put me back on earth. Like, it changes someone,
I'm going home, and I'm pretty happy about that.
I've been all over the world. I don't think the United States is the best country in the world. I know the United States is the best country in the world. And I've seen the freedoms the Americans enjoy. And it's something worth fighting for. It's something worth going back for.
Leave no one behind. That's the creed you're taught and live by in the military. Any soldier or Marine will tell you of the sacrifices they would make for their fellow soldier or Marine. White, black, brown, rich, poor, citizen or non-citizen, you have each other's back.
And that's why the deportation of our veterans, those longtime U.S. residents who volunteered to serve the country, is so offensive. They made the greatest sacrifices out of commitment to the country, yet when they return home, we not only leave them behind, we boot them out. Every day, immigration authorities detain and deport U.S. veterans despite their honorable service. They're only allowed to return to U.S. soil to be buried in it in a casket.
3 years ago, Hector Barajas, who runs a shelter and advocacy center for deported veterans in Tijuana, asked the ACLU for help to bring the veterans home. Most were lifelong permanent residents of the United States who were told by the military, incorrectly, that their service automatically made them U.S. citizens. The ACLU took on the cause of dozens of deported veterans, and through their legal work, veterans Hector Barajas and Daniel Torres are citizens. Marco Chavez now has his green card back and has moved to Iowa to reunite with his children. Daniel and Hector are with us tonight. Gentlemen, would you please stand so we can welcome you home?
This assault on our veterans is bad enough, but it gets worse. The Trump administration is now seeking to ban non-citizens from serving in the military, reversing US policy dating back to the founding of the Republic. We have sued the administration over that xenophobic policy. And we also took on the case of Specialist Ye Ji-si, whom the government refused to naturalize and whose abrupt discharge left her vulnerable to deportation. We won her case too, and she was recently sworn in as a US citizen. Specialist C, would you please stand?
I just want to say I spoke to Hector earlier, and he says now he can go back and forth across the border because he's still doing that work in Tijuana. This is just one of the many ongoing efforts by the ACLU of Southern California and its cooperating attorneys to ensure that America keeps its promises in the Bill of Rights. And now, with a special note of congratulations for the ACLU, please welcome the representative from California's 33rd Congressional District, the Honorable Ted Lieu.
Good evening. Good evening. Like many of you, I've been taking on the Trump administration for nearly 2 years. So let me first say what a thrill it is to now be able to stand in front of normal, rational, kind people. And as a veteran, I'm particularly pleased to be able to salute ACLU of Southern California's 95th anniversary. And there is one thing that all veterans have in common across generations. We all took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. And that is what the ACLU does. But you do it with a pen, which oftentimes is mightier than a sword. And because of your advocacy at the state and local and federal levels, you've enacted tremendous legislation to protect the most vulnerable and to protect our constitutional rights. And very happy that your job will just be a little bit easier because come this January, the U.S. House of Representatives changes control. But we don't have as much of an effect in the courts, and that's where the ACLU plays a huge role through your lawsuits, through your filings. I know I'm not supposed to be partisan, but I just have to say, why is it that it's always the ACLU and the courts getting Republicans to do the right thing? But because of your advocacy in the courts, you have been able to help America be a better place. It is because of ACLU of Southern California's work, along with other folks, on the Flores settlement many years ago that prevented now the Trump administration from ripping kids away from their parents. And it's because of your great work that not only have I been a card-carrying member of the ACLU, I became a monthly donor after Donald Trump got elected. And that is why it's a great transition to the next speaker who is going to make an ask of you for additional funds. So thank you for having me here. Look forward to working with all of you. And come this January, it'll become morning in America again. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Wu. And now, please welcome the Executive Director of the American Civil Liberties Union of Southern California, Hector Villagra.
Hope has two beautiful daughters. Their names are Anger and Courage. Anger at the way things are, and courage to see that they don't remain that way. The philosopher and theologian Augustine wrote those words 16 centuries ago. I've often thought about them these past 2 years, but especially since the passing last week of Ramona Ripston. Ramona led the ACLU in Southern California for 38 years. She engendered hope time and again because she was so intolerant of injustice, she could not let it pass. Never. In 1972, a woman had yet to lead an ACLU office. During her interview, Ramona was asked how, as a mother with young children, she could possibly do the job. She was furious. She knew the all-male interview committee would never have asked a man that same question. She considered biting her tongue. Instead, she said, "I'll do the job just like any man." Later, when asked what her first priority would be, she said, "I'm going to change the board so unfair questions don't ever get asked again." She was angry and brave enough to speak out, even if it risked losing the job. Now, Ramona didn't live to see the record numbers of women, people of color, and LGBTQ candidates elected across the nation a few days after she died. But I can imagine her reaction. Something along the lines of, "It's about fucking time." I don't have to tell you, these last 2 years have been difficult. There's one outrage after another. It's relentless. Tonight, I want to tell you a story, one I wish were not true, and see what it can teach us about anger, courage, and hope. Last November, Ricardo fled Guatemala and started the hard, dangerous journey to the US with his 3-year-old daughter, Luna. A full month and 1,500 miles later, when they finally reached Texas, they found a border agent and requested asylum. Once in custody, Ricardo assumed they'd see an immigration judge who would decide if they could stay in the US or if they'd be sent back home. Instead, that same night, he learned they'd be separated. No hearing, no judge, no explanation. The next morning, agents ripped Luna, wailing, clutching from her father's arms. They locked Luna in a cage across from Ricardo's, in a cage just a few feet from his, where he watched her sob for 2 hours until she was taken away. They reassured Ricardo he'd be reunited with Luna after seeing a judge. But a week later, they put him on a plane to Guatemala without a hearing and without Luna. Ricardo had been given a toll-free number to call for information about Luna. When he called, he was told there was no record of her. On June 26, thanks to an ACLU lawsuit, a federal judge ordered Trump to stop separating families and reunite those who had been torn apart. Because she was under age 5, Luna was among the first prioritized for reunification. But it wasn't until September 21st, nearly 3 months later, that Luna and Ricardo reunited. It took so long partly because after traumatizing his daughter, the government spent a month investigating his fitness as a parent. By then, Luna had turned 4 and spent nearly 10 months in detention, separated from her father. Only time will tell what lasting impact the separation will have on Luna. But the harm to our nation's moral fabric will last forever. Without shame, without remorse, Trump ripped 2,654 children from their families. And he's moved so slowly to solve a crisis he created that 245 children still remain separated from their parents. I feel this outrage in my heart and in my bones. I would not be standing here tonight if our government took the same callous attitude towards refugees 56 years ago. In 1962, my grandparents sent my mom, then age 16, and her two younger sisters, 14 and 11, to this country, not knowing if they'd ever see each other again. As a parent, I cannot imagine how desperate my grandparents must have felt. But I do know how grateful they were that the US welcomed refugees. Now, despite my anger, I feel hope too, because I see what Augustine meant. The outrage I feel, the outrage we all feel, is important. It reflects our ongoing sense of injustice. It means we have not grown numb, and it forces us to ask ourselves, are we angry enough to do anything about it? Are we brave enough to channel our anger into action? What gives me hope is that so many people have gotten angry and brave enough to take part in historic women's marches, gather at airports to protest the Muslim ban, take to the streets to demand gun control, to protest the family separations, call, text, and email Congress day after day, and speak out in town halls to save the Affordable Care Act, and speak truth to power by sharing their experiences of sexual assault. May we all have the courage of Dr. Blasey Ford. People have taken action by joining and supporting the ACLU too. Our membership has swelled from 400,000 to 1.8 million. With the power of so many behind us, the ACLU has been able to fight injustice after injustice. We're fighting Trump's ban against transgender men and women serving in the military. Fighting Trump's attempts to block abortions for immigrant women. Challenging Trump's revocation of young immigrants' DACA status, and fighting Trump's decision to target 200,000 people from what he called shithole countries. There are many hard-fought victories to celebrate. One that stands out happened on Election Day. The ACLU led a campaign that overturned a ban developed after the Civil War to keep African Americans from voting. As a result, the state of Florida will restore the voting rights of 1.4 million people. 1.4 million. And the ACLU led campaigns in Michigan and Nevada to make it, imagine that, easier for people to vote. Now, there have been bitter setbacks too. This past year, the ACLU tried to update California's use of standard for police. That standard dates back to 1872, and it justifies far too many police killings. Following the tragic shooting of Stephon Clark in Sacramento, we said enough is enough. We sought to make clear that officers may only use lethal force when absolutely necessary. That bill died without the legislature even having to hold a vote. Success is never granted, but I can promise you this: with the rights, the dignity, and the lives of so many at stake, we won't stop fighting. Never. But we can't get trapped in the narrative of resistance to Trump. It's a reactive stance. It responds to Trump, and we can't possibly let him set our agenda. And ultimately, resistance obscures what we stand for. That is what will sustain us, give us the strength to fight on and win. We see it as fulfilling America's unfinished promise, making we the people truly mean everyone. It all depends on us. our willingness to heed Luna and Ricardo's cries for justice, to heed the cries from any people that are othered, despised, and dehumanized, and to understand that all the cries spring from the same struggle for rights and dignity. So let's be angry and brave like Ramona was. Let's take action against injustice. Let's reject Trump's vision of America that uses fear to divide we the people into us versus them. Let's fight for an inclusive vision of America because we're all in this together. Our rights, our humanity, our dignity are all bound together. So let's stand together for each other. Let's speak up and speak out for each other. Let's make our voices heard from the streets and the airports to the town halls and the ballot box. Let's raise our voices together until our collective roar can no longer be ignored. Tonight, right now, I ask you to take action. Support the ACLU. Please fill out the donation cards and place them in the bowls at your tables. If you're new to the ACLU, please start your journey with us now. If you're already a supporter, please continue your generosity. Your support ensures that at this most critical time, the ACLU of Southern California has all the resources to continue its 95-year legacy of protecting and promoting everyone's rights. We face a president with no sense of our ideals, no knowledge of our history. America's greatness lies not in some imaginary past, but in a future we can and must make together. Thank you.
Wow, this is cool. I didn't know what to expect when I was asked to do this, but I'm very happy I said yes. So it's easy to honor Kenya Barris because there's so much in him that is worthy of being honored. Kenya, you have earned the public's affection for your work, your creation. You have earned the respect of your peers from your success. You put your principles to work in not only what you do for the public in terms of consuming what we make, but you also are a valued member of the Board of Trustees of the ACLU Foundation of Southern California. It has been my privilege to collaborate with you on Blackish, and the great thing about that is that we are not just entertaining people, that we're kind of teaching people at the same time. And I think for me, the most wonderful thing about it is that in Blackish, as you said, you know, conversation. We get to talk about things in our show that folks have been talking about for at least like the last 60 years. Things that black folks have been talking about for like the last 150 years. Things like voting rights, discrimination, police practices, and on and on and on. But by bringing up these subjects on a program that everybody watches, you have succeeded in starting that conversation, that cross-pollination, if you will, among many groups of people who may or may not have thought that they don't have much in common. You are incredibly fearless, my brother, in the way in which you talk about these issues, and you pulled the shit off brilliantly. You really do. Your vulnerability and your curiosity about these things, your ability to look at things from so many different perspectives is really one of your greatest strengths. But I also have to mention now, sitting here, being here tonight, and seeing you with your entire family, I know that they are really where you draw most of your strength and your courage from. Your family is beautiful. You and Rainbow have a beautiful, beautiful family, and I know you're fighting for them. I know that's why you're doing the work that you're doing. So please continue. I mean, you're brave, you're bold, you know, standing with an organization like the ACLU and redressing the images that, you know, the issues that challenge our democracy right now in this moment is really important. And your artistry, your personal commitment to keep having the conversation, to keep the information flowing, man, that's so important, because you let us all know that we're not alone, that we're not isolated in how we feel about what's going on in the world today and all these things that are really affecting our lives. You are a uniter. And I know that we are all here very much united in wanting to honor you with the 2018 Bill of Rights Award from the ACLU of Southern California.
Come on up here and get it, man.
It's fucking Laurence Fishburne, guys. It's my big bro. I cannot tell you, that man ushered me into a way, if he believes in me, I could believe in me in a different way. So thank you, Laurence. Thank you for doing this. And thank you to the ACLU of Southern California. And guys, thank you for being here tonight. You know what I'm saying? Honestly, it means a lot, all the people. We got a lot of work to do, guys. We do. And I truly believe we're going to do it. And as long as we do it together, they can't stop us. United. I'm nervous as shit. I really believe being united, that's the key to our success, unity. But as you guys all know, achieving unity is very difficult. It's the word, and you think about it itself, the word unity in itself is a word that's been long wrought with a history of discourse and friction. When America adopted the Bill of Rights in December 15, 1791, it was an attempt to unify a feisty, rogue, nascent, upstart country that had just gone through a revolution against Great Britain, who at the time believed that rights were not inalienable. And inalienable, like unity, is an important word in the countries between us and London, our origin stories. Inalienable means unable to be taken away from or given away by the possessor. These two words are at the root of everything American Revolution was fought for. The ability of a country to be able to unite and have rights that were inherently ours by birth, a right of our humanity. That philosophy is the essential narrative premise that the Constitution used in setting up our entire government. But here's the thing that I think people forget, that although the Constitution set up our government, it was the Bill of Rights that protected our individual rights from intrusion by that government. It made them inalienable. It made them ours. And it was the ACLU that was set up as the watchdog association that made sure of this. America was then, as it is now, made up of disparate people. In fact, in my case, I would have only been 3/5 of a person. I'm gonna let that go for right now, because we got other shit to talk about. Because honestly, whether you're black, white, Latin, Asian, or whatever, every man, woman, child in this country is seeking the same thing right now, liberty. And I believe more than ever in these times, the liberty we all seek can only be achieved through unity, a united belief and respect in our fellow man's inalienable rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. These are divisive times. There's no denying that. But you and I know that what can reunite us is communication and knowledge. The reason people are separated is misinformation, lack of communication, and a very well manifested isolation. When I do panels, I constantly am talking to people, and I'm like, white people, do not let your kids go to school with all white people. Black people, do not let your kids go to school with all black people. Latinos with all Latinos, Asians with all Asians, rich with all rich, poor with all poor. Because what that does is it sets up a situation that they don't really know each other. When we see people, we need to see people as not just ideas, but as actual people. We need to come together and be real things. It's so tragic to me that I refuse to call him President Trump, doesn't see people as things. He sees them as thoughts and concepts. And for future generations, we have to stop that. You have to make sure that your kids and our kids see people as real things and have experiences that relate to real people. The ACLU sees people. That's what they do. We're going to meet some of them tonight. We'll meet many more in our life. The ACLU, why I support them, is here for everyone. And I'm very, very, very proud and honored that Blackish has been able to be a show that allows people to see that we're much more alike than we are different. And that our differences actually should be celebrated because that's what makes us better as a country. I embrace layering in things, from cake to pizza to lasagna, that's why my suit is ill-fitting, to the richness of our cities, our schools, and our freedoms. As Americans, I honestly, in my heart, believe that we're better when we look at each other as the layer that puts us all together. That's what makes the real slice of what Americana is. Norman Lear, he was one of my most unbelievable mentors, friends, and just uniters, 40 years ago was saying, let's talk about us. And now, all of a sudden, because of selling soap, we stopped. And that was the whole point of Blackish, to really say we want to talk about who we are. See, true unity carries responsibility. And in accepting that and this award, I ask us all to come together and unite as a people. Share a belief in liberty. That liberty that our founding fathers, that diverse group of white men, had when they wrote into the Bill of Rights, and that the ACLU defends for each and every one of us every day. I want you to understand that that principle is what makes us a country. That's what makes us special. Don't let anyone tell you different. We have to see that no one can take from us what we have gained and garnered as a people who love. And that's what I want to do. I just want to give love. It can be beat. It can be beat. And I want to say thank you to the ACLU, my friend Norman Lear, my friend Laurence Fishburne, my mother and father who were here, my wife, my children. All of you have come to celebrate this, my friends and family. This is amazing. They can't stop us. But we got to play to win. We got to play to win. As much as I love Barack Obama, Michelle Obama was right when she said, when they go low, we go high, but we got to go low. This shit ends now. We're not going to let it happen again. We're going to do this together as a people. And I thank the ACLU, and I thank everything I've ever learned for this award, but I want to let you know that we are together. And this is strong, but this is stronger. And let's get together. Thank you, guys.
And now, Ahilana Rulananthem.
Good evening, everyone. It's a hard video to watch. And I have to say, I've never been prouder of the work that we've done on immigrants' rights issues than I have over the last 2 years. I unfortunately have another difficult topic to talk about now. And it's not even the last mass shooting that's happened in our country. But about 2 weeks ago, a gunman walked into a synagogue in Pittsburgh, and he killed 11 people. He wounded 6 others, shouting, "All Jews must die," as he attacked. On the screens behind me, you'll find the names of those 11 people. Let's please just take a moment to honor their memory. The killer espoused various conspiracy theories, but he directed a lot of hate at one particular organization. It was the Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, or HIAS. HIAS is familiar, yeah, right? Very familiar to those of us. Yeah, very familiar to those of us who do immigrants' rights work, because they're a 100-year-old refugee assistance organization. And they do not just work for Jewish refugees, but for refugees from all over the world. And in fact, many of the refugees that HIAS helped to resettle, particularly in the last few years, were from Afghanistan and from Syria. As their spokesperson said, you know, we used to help refugees because they were Jewish. Now we help them because we are Jewish. But in the killer's deluded mind, all of this somehow was worthy of hate. And so a few weeks before the killing, he had actually reposted a tweet on a racist chat platform, specifically condemning Jews for bringing Muslims into the country. He also thought HIAS was evil because it had defended the so-called caravan of Central American families. It's not a word I love. You know, the caravan, that's a group of families who are seeking safety in our country under the refugee protection laws that we enacted in the aftermath of the Holocaust, because our country had turned away Jewish refugees, some of whom had died in that horror. But all that history was lost on this killer, as it seems to be lost on so many people in our country right now. Just hours before the killing, he posted again, HIAS likes to bring invaders in that kill people. I'm going in. As it turns out, HIAS is just one of many groups doing interfaith work who have risen to the challenge of the last 2 years. I'm so proud to see them stand up and say, we will not stop our work in the aftermath of this killing. And so proud also to have worked with so many other interfaith groups who have worked alongside the ACLU in this era. They were with us at the airport, resisting the Muslim ban. They were with us on the border, challenging the family separation policy. And they've been with us so many times that we have challenged this administration's hateful policies time and time again. We're honored to have invited people from those interfaith groups to be with us here tonight. Will you please stand and be recognized? We thank you. We thank you for your work. We admire you for your courage, and we stand with you in the resistance. Thank you very much.
Good evening, everyone. It's an incredible honor to be here tonight celebrating the critical work of the ACLU of Southern California, all the honorees here tonight, and especially my friend, Eva Longoria Baston. Eva, you are an inspiration to so many. And I am personally inspired by you every single day while I watch you blaze trails for women, for Latinas in particular, with every single challenge that you take on, every single calling on your life that you answer with fierce grit and intelligence. We have yet to see the limit of your many creative talents, actress, producer, director. Watching you refuse to live inside of anyone else's tidy little boxes, I was personally inspired to follow in your footsteps and step up to the role of Madam Director. I know that you also inspired our dear friend Gina Rodriguez to do the same, and so many countless others. As a creative force, you are a badass boss, and your life is an example to all of us for what is possible. From the bottom of my heart and on behalf of so many of our peers, I thank you for always shining your light and for doing it in your big-ass Texas hair and makeup to boot. As a compatriot and as a friend, your generosity and your heart are unparalleled. I personally have experienced you taking my calls and my texts at all hours of the night and showing up for me and for so many others, whether it's to drop everything at the last minute and rally Latino voters in Florida, or to help me figure out the best breast pump to use. Our friendship has been a gift to me, as I know it's a gift to everyone who's lucky enough to call you friend. And I am so glad that we became moms together this year. It is truly a privilege to watch you expand in every single capacity as you raise your sweet boy, Santiago. You are a testament to the reach and the depth of a mother's love. As your heart grows for him, it grows for everyone and everything you have so generously nurtured and loved throughout your life. I've also had the privilege of activating and organizing with you. From our work to empower Latinos in politics, to the early days of birthing the Time's Up movement, I have watched you roll up your sleeves and do the down and dirty work. As an artist, an activist, a philanthropist, Eva has demonstrated an unwavering dedication to social justice and equality. She's given her time, energy, and voice to the democratic principles that underlie the very promise of justice for all. Eva has a long-standing commitment to the Latino community. While starring in the most popular show in the world, Desperate Housewives, Eva attended night school in an effort to better understand the historical and systematic oppression of the Latino community. She received her master's degree in Chicano studies and political science and wrote her thesis on the underrepresentation of Latinas in the fields of science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Today, Eva continues to promote the importance of higher education and STEM education for Latinas through her foundation. In 2012, she launched the Eva Longoria Foundation, which empowers Latinas to build better futures for themselves and their families through education and entrepreneurship. Since then, Eva's foundation has donated more than $3 million to effective grassroots programs and has reached more than 17,000 women and girls with STEM education programs, mentors, parent engagement courses, college scholarships, and microloans to start and grow their businesses. And to date, her foundation has helped Latina entrepreneurs create and retain more than 500 jobs. As a producer and a director, Eva tells the stories that are important to women and Latinos. In addition to the unfortunately timely documentary, Reversing Roe, which just came out on Netflix and I urge everyone to see. She's also produced documentaries like Food Chains and The Harvest that humanize American farm workers' issues. Eva has worked closely with legendary labor leader and activist Dolores Huerta and the United Farm Workers to raise awareness and call for a change in farm workers' working conditions. Eva was a devoted advocate for federal legislation that aimed to protect farm worker children from exploitation in the fields. She is also a leading voice for justice in the political sphere. She co-chaired President Obama's re-election campaign, because she didn't have enough to do, was a surrogate and campaigner for Hillary Clinton, and co-founded the Latino Victory Project, which works to increase Latino political power and representation at every government level. Through her political activism, Eva supports candidates and policies that aim to make our country a place where everyone can build their American dream, regardless of their gender or background. What's more, Eva's leadership on the pressing issues of our time cannot be overstated. Eva is one of the founding members of the Time's Up movement and has been a driving force to reform the workplace and end sexual harassment. She's advocated for Keep Families Together and brought attention to the family separation crisis. Not only has she spoken out about all these issues, she has supported the work that organizations like the ACLU and others are doing to reunite families. She's even used her beautiful son, Santiago's birth announcement on social media to raise money for the ACLU and Raíces. Always working, that girl. Eva, no one can keep up with you. You are tireless, and you are tireless as an advocate for those in our society who would otherwise be pushed aside and forgotten. Your strong, consistent commitment to social justice, not just when it's easy, but when it's hard too, is why I am so proud to be here today and to present you with this Bill of Rights Award.
Oh my gosh, I'm a mess. I hate speaking after America. She's so good. I love you so much, thank you. I so deeply respect America's activism. You know, we came up together in this activism thing. I mean, we really started this, we were both campaigning for Hillary in the primaries against Obama. That was a long time ago. We supported Obama as well. But, you know, America's words and your activism, your philanthropy really come from her knowledge and her dedication to our community as well. And so when I grow up, I want to be America. And we're going to start a campaign, America for America. Right? Thank you all for being here tonight. For me, it's a very big honor. I'm very nervous. I hate speaking in front of these rooms because y'all are really the heroes. And sometimes I feel like you go, who's that stupid celebrity up there? So I'm glad we're all here to celebrate the work that each of you do day in and day out to make this a better, safer, more just country, and especially in these times. And this work is just more important than ever now. And I'm honored and humbled to share the stage with all of the honorees tonight. Trailblazers like Rita Moreno, my icon, my idol. Kenya Barris, who gave me many directing jobs, and not because I was a person of color, but you know, I'm a woman, and as a director, it's very hard to find these jobs, and Kenya was like, yep, come on aboard, and so I've directed many Blackishes, and I appreciate it, Kenya, I appreciate the opportunity. And of course, Constance Wu and Tarana, Burke and Alyssa Milano, my sisters in the Time's Up movement. I love you. Alyssa's another one. You call up and she's like, yeah, I'm there. What are we doing? What are we doing? What are we doing? Yeah. Alyssa's like, ready to go. Let's do it. She's like, let's do it. What are we doing? But thank you to each of you for the work that you do, often without recognition and often at a great cost. And during the last few years, the ACLU has achieved celebrity status, in most part thanks to this administration. You guys have been busy. But it's in challenging times like this, when many people feel hopeless and under siege, that the ACLU reminds us that our liberties are far from guaranteed. But guess what? It's not only the ACLU's job to protect our rights and liberties promised to us by the Constitution, it's our job too. You know, our country was not meant to be run by executive orders. It's meant to be a democracy. And voting is the basis of that democracy. Freedom of speech is critical to our democracy. A free media is crucial for our democracy. All of these things enable us to make sure that our government is accountable to people, to us, and all of these things are at risk today. You know, y'all saw the CNN guy, Jim, get kicked out of a press conference, doing his job, making sure our government is accountable. I mean, right now we have a lot of government officials who are using their power to push through an ideological agenda that runs contrary to our nation's founding values, and how quickly they forget we are a nation of immigrants. So it's no coincidence that most of my activism is primarily in the Latino community and in the women's community, and that's because I am a Latino and a woman. But my activism started very, very small. My earliest memories are volunteering at the Special Olympics with my mom and my sister, and my job, my primary job, was to give out hugs. I was a hugger, and I had a thing, and it said hugger. And many of you know I have a special needs sister. I grew up with a sister with a mental disability, and my mother became a special education teacher because of my sister, and she was a special education teacher for 30 years. And I learned from her, and I learned compassion, and I learned the word other so early in my life because my sister's my oldest sister. And it was because of her that we became a very charitable family. We would always go places where Lisa wasn't allowed to, she couldn't even go to the Boys and Girls Club because she had a disability, so we had to volunteer so my sister could use the programs. Salvation Army had a lot of programs, and she couldn't go unless we volunteered to the organization so that my sister could play there. And so we really knew the word volunteer very early in our lives. I thought it was a job. I was like, when I grow up, I want to be a volunteer. Like, when do I get paid? And it wasn't until my work in Hollywood, when my work here gave me a larger platform and a bigger voice, and I started to receive a lot of requests to lend my name to many causes. And that experience really gave me the opportunity to think strategically about the kind of work that I wanted to do in the world. And I was really lucky, as America mentioned, to have a mentor like Dolores Huerta very early on in my life. She was amazing. And she told me, she said, hermana, that means sister. She said, one day you're going to have a voice and you better have something to say. And I thought, what does she mean? I didn't really know what she meant, but I knew what was near and dear to my heart, which was my community. So being Latino, I researched all of the barriers that we faced. and there were many. We're the largest minority group in the United States. We're the most uninsured, most unemployed, most uneducated, and we're under attack. In the current political climate, we are one of the groups facing the most discrimination. From day one of this administration's campaign, he attacked Latino community. We're murderers and rapists, and we're not. I'm 9th generation American. I'm more American than Donald Trump. And so that's when I decided to start the Eva Longoria Foundation, with the idea that I wanted to narrow the opportunity gap and the economic gap that exists for Latinas through educational opportunity and entrepreneurship programs and parental programs. And it was important for me. I decided to focus on the women of the Latino community, because let's face it, if women ruled the world would be a better place. And as America said, in the last 6 years, we've reached many families, and we've given away a lot of money to a lot of organizations, and we do it in a way that we can track if it's effective. And one of the programs that we had was a parental engagement program. We said, how do we get Latinos to succeed in school? And the #1 factor was parental engagement, a parent saying the word college in the household. Some students have never even heard the word said in their household. And so being able to do this work with my foundation has been really critical and amazing. And of course, on the political side, I've been able to lend my voice to political campaigns and issues that I believe in that will create a more just and compassionate nation. I also co-founded the Latino Victory Fund, which helps Latinos build political power. You know, we're still the most unregistered to vote. We're still underrepresented in our government, and what we want to do is make sure that we have a seat at the table at every level of government and policy making. So sometimes people think, who cares about diversity? And for us, it matters. Diverse representation of Latinos in government, in the media, what we do here in Hollywood, it's very critical, because this vitriolic rhetoric that is being circulated about Latinos and immigrants, it only reinforces hateful stereotypes, antiquated stereotypes, and it has real world consequences. It influences how we think, how we act, and how we make policy. And this has been true of women too, because it's not only our identities that are intersectional, but also our oppressions, right? Your oppression is my oppression, right? My glass ceiling is your glass ceiling. Okay, my pay cut is your pay cut. If they come for you, they come for me. And that's why the work of ACLU is so important, because a win for them is a win for us, right? For you and you and you. You know, and speaking of women, our national conversation about sexual harassment and violence has evolved over the last few years. Thank you to many brave women who dared to speak out. Alyssa. And so I'm really proud to have been part of the Time's Up movement, and we've created such an amazing sisterhood that has gone beyond sexual harassment in the workplace. It goes into voting, it goes into which breast pumps we should use. It carries, just keeps going. But we have a lot more work to do to ensure that women can fully and equally participate in society, participate in the workforce without being harassed or being retaliated or abused. So I don't know if you noticed, the last thing I want to say is this past midterms, we saw more women running for office than ever before. It's huge. People kept talking about the blue wave, and we're like, no, it's the pink wave. But women understand what's at stake because it affects their families, and they're willing to take action. And we, women, are challenging what it means to be a politician. It's not a dirty word. You know, there are many different kinds of women who ran. There were activists and moms and journalists and volunteers and veterans. God bless you, veterans. God bless you. But all of these women who were running, and many of them won, were across the entire political spectrum. And so, ladies, gone are the days where so many of you were led to believe that you were not meant for public service. We are meant for public service. And so many of us are waiting for that woman to come on to the scene to say, we'll support her. But guess what? You might be her. right? You might be her. Alyssa might be her. There's a lot of people, they might be you. So guess what? Women are the majority of this country. We're not a special interest group. Okay? And so we have to take action, and it's important that we have representation. There was a lot on the ballot this past election, many issues, healthcare and the environment and immigration and voting rights. This election, there were so many voting measures that you had to vote to make sure you could vote in the future. And so it was very confusing in some states. But as Obama said, there was no greater issue on the ballot box than the character of our country. And I'm inspired to stand here tonight and to be reminded that there are so many people who care deeply about true, real equality in our country, and you're willing to work for it day after day. There's high-profile events like this, fancy dinners, fancy red carpets, but there's also the quiet work behind the scenes, and that's what you guys are doing. So even though we're facing many, many challenges, we're going to face them together in ways that are true to American values, the values which this country was founded on, the values that make America great, not again, but great as it always has been. So thank you so much for this honor. I'm so humbled by it. Thank you so much.
And now, please welcome back ACLU Foundation of Southern California board member and extremely recent Bill of Rights Award recipient, Kenya Barris, our friend, who is backstage. Kenya, you're on. Here he comes. Welcome back, Kenya Barris.
Hey, guys. I know I spoke to you. Hello, again. I know I spoke to you before about unity, and I'm back again to speak about unity. Unity means that we all work together.
Sorry, kid, but we got to do this.
All right. Whatever. Your choice. And right now, I am asking you in unity to give a little extra to the ACLU. A lot extra will be good, but we'll settle for a little. We know the kind of America we want to live in. America that doesn't believe in gerrymandering or cutting off people at the polls, or doesn't stop people at the borders and put them in cages, doesn't turn away people seeking asylum, doesn't attack reporters for reporting the facts. Do I have to go on? Because I can go on. Shit is crazy right now, guys. We can make America America again. I actually spoke to Richard Levitt, who runs CAA, and he said a great campaign would say to take America, let's make America great again, and let's take it. Let's use it as ours. Let's really do it. And I was like, that's not a bad idea. Together, the ACLU has the most powerful weapon ever invented, and it's the Bill of Rights. We have the powerful army that can actually make the Bill of Rights a real thing. And I'm asking you guys to, unite with me in giving the financial resources to help them do that. I'm personally pledging $100,000 to the ACLU. It'd be great if you could give more, or that. But if you give 1,000, or 10, or 100, or 4 quarters, it doesn't matter. Let's just all, if everyone in this building gives 100% of whatever they can, together we win. That's what we have to do. Together, let's make this a movement together. If you look, you can fill out the donation cards that are right in front of you. Toss them into the bowl in front of you, and if you put Kenya, it'll take off my bill a little bit more. It'll go down a little bit more, and I appreciate that. And so, honestly, I just wanted to say whatever you can give, we really, really appreciate. And thank you so much for coming out tonight. This is a fundraiser, and these are the best people to ever do it, and people that we have fun with. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kenya. Here to sing I'll Fight by Diane Warren from the documentary RBG. Here's the Grammy Award-winning singer, Academy Award-winning actress, and global activist, the electrifying Jennifer Hudson.
Listen. you're taking all that you can take, and you're sure you're never gonna catch a break, and the tears of rivers running down your face, yeah. When your faith is low, when you got no strength left, and you think you're gone as far as you can get, and you to run down to take another step. Oh, I will take up your troubles. Oh, I know it's a fight. Come on. So I'll fight that war for you. I'll fight, stand and defend you. Take your side. That's what I'm here to do. I'll be there to be strong. Oh, I keep on. Yeah, listen. When this shit just takes another piece of you, everybody takes all they can get from you, till you're left with almost nothing left but you. Oh. When it's not, it's like a battle you can win, and the pain is like the weight you're carrying. I'ma be the one to help you carry it. Oh, I will take on your trouble. That's what I'm here to do. I'll be there to be strong. Oh, I'll keep on. I have your back when your back's to the wall, and I'll catch your tears when your tears fall. I'll give it all, I won't give up the fight. So keep on. I'll fight that war for you. Yeah. I'll fight. That's what I'm here to do. I'll be there to be strong. Oh, I'll keep on. Keep fighting and God bless you.
Names are destiny. I challenge you to find a personality more constant and steadfast than Constance Wu. For so many who have spent years in the entertainment industry, paying dues after dues after dues, speed bumps can become brick walls. For Constance, brick walls became speed ramps that she inexhaustibly, irrepressibly threw herself against. She was Jim Sturgis's driver on Electric Slide. IMDb it. Not Electric Slide, or Electric Slide, but not Constance, because Constance was way down below the line on that film. Constance threw herself at these brick walls until she launched, and then she threw herself at the next brick wall. This isn't just an inherent instinct to stand up for herself out of ambition and drive. It is an instinct to simply stand up. It is an instinct to stand with. It is an instinct to stand for. And it's an instinct to stand against. Constance has leveraged her visibility to become an advocate for women, immigrants, refugees, people of color, all colors, and the LGBTQIP2SAA and sometimes Y community. The sometimes Y was a joke, everything else was real, so represent. Constance has taken a stand literally outside of detention centers where families are being pulled apart. And she has taken a stand in the ACLU's historic Stand for Your Rights telethon. Constance is constantly taking stands. She has never been afraid of calling bullshit. She has never been afraid of doing the hard work, not for herself, not for her friends or her family, not for people she has never met and may never meet, because she believes human rights are human rights, which makes me so incredibly proud and honored to stand up with her tonight and present Constance Wu the 2018 Bill of Rights Award.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Bryan, for that introduction. Bryan is an incredible writer, advocate, friend, and he throws a great Halloween party. It's like the best. So thank you, ACLU of Southern California. It's truly an honor to be here. But when my reps told me that you wanted to give me this award, I was like, oh, cool, cool, cool. But I got like one question. Do I have to give a speech? So when they said, yes, Constance, you have to give a speech, I said to this honor, pass. No, thank you. I don't need this award. I don't actually like giving speeches. I mean, I've done it, but I don't like it. It's easier for me to like tweet. And some people are like, oh, hey, but you're an actor. Don't you like being on stage? And I love being on stage when I'm in a play and I'm in character, speaking a character's voice and words. But my own voice, my own words, pass, no, thank you. But I decided to speak because the systemic culture that has birthed my reluctance to speak is one that I no longer care to fortify. So there's a lot to that sentence. It took me some time to come up with, so I'm going to explain. So I grew up in a fairly conservative town. I went to a big public high school. Our high school mascot was a Confederate rebel holding a Confederate flag. It's not anymore, but it was when I was there. And I was one of a handful of Asian American kids there. But you know what? I loved my high school, and I felt like I belonged. My friends never made me feel different. Most of them are still my good friends today because I had assimilated really well. And assimilation is a word that you hear a lot in East Asian communities. It's a fancy word for fitting in. And teenagers want to fit in. And before the internet, your choice of places to fit in was limited to the places, the houses around you. I remember going over to my friend Sue Ellen Smith's house and seeing how her house was decorated different than mine. Her kitchen had different appliances. Her pantry had different food, and I went back home thinking that there was something wrong with my house. And then when I looked to TV, it confirmed that. TV showed me that the right way to be American. So when American holidays like Thanksgiving happened, I would watch TV and I would try to like teach my parents how to do it. I would say things like, Mom, that's not how you do it here. Or Dad, people don't do that here. You have to do it like this. Or I'd be watching TV with friends and I would prickle when an Asian character on TV had a strong spoken accent, an accent like that of my parents. Shut up, I would think. I didn't want their voice to be heard. Other people made fun of them, and I didn't want to be associated with someone who sounded like my parents? Why did I let someone else's superficial ridicule of my parents' speech matter more than my actual lived experience of them? Because that's how it can feel to be a minority. You think you have to shut up and keep your head down in order to fit in order to survive. That you can't deviate from the norm or else. It's kind of like, you know, in that movie Jurassic Park, like being around a T-Rex. They can't see you if you don't move. Because if you assimilate, you're more accepted. Because they love it when you follow their lead, as long as you don't become the leader. So when I led and starred in the 2 most historic Hollywood projects for Asian Americans, it kind of stirred people up. Fresh Off the Boat and Crazy Rich Asians were, thank you. Those projects were pivotal because modern Asian American stories hadn't been done in mainstream America for over 25 years. 25 years without representation. So the press was suddenly talking, but no one had really talked about it. It had taken a quarter century for people to even talk about it. They can't see us if we don't move, and also they can't hear us if we don't speak. And here I was, given the opportunity to speak here and saying, no thanks, pass. So I was like, oh God, I guess that's why I need to speak. Because the systemic culture that has birthed my reluctance to speak is one that I no longer care to fortify. When I shot Crazy Rich Asians, I worked with actors who grew up in Asia. They grew up in Malaysia, Singapore, China. The conversation on representation was a new concept to them because they didn't grow up as the minority in their country. They got to see representation every day when they were kids on their daily news anchors, their soap operas, their children's books had faces like theirs and were written in their languages. How lucky they were that their next-door neighbors were like them. So the conversation on representation wasn't really theirs. It was for Asian kids who grew up as minorities and weren't sure how to be. The American Civil Liberties Union fights the fights that say you don't have to assimilate to belong here. You don't have to be the mainstream's ideas of sexuality, race, gender in order to pursue a life of dignity. And the ACLU is nonpartisan because, to me, it's not about being right or wrong, being conservative or progressive. It's not about being deserving. It's simply about being, just the opportunity to be. And when you separate a family at the border, or deny a person a bathroom, when a child is killed by a mass shooter, they are deprived of simply being. America's representation of Asians in TV and film might seem like it's a little thing, but I fight for it because to a girl like I used to be, that little thing would have been really big. She could have seen TV shows where the inside of houses looked like the inside of her house. And she would have been proud of the language and accents that were spoken in that house because that was the house that built her. So, thank you, ACLU of Southern California. Thank you to my friends and family and fellow activists, to Larry and Kara for convincing me to do this, and to you all for being here. That's the end of my speech. Thanks. Bye. Oh.
And now, everyone, prepare to be moved and impressed. Please welcome poet and activist performing her poem, We Will. Here is Alicia Wise.
I've never known a time when a woman was incapable of speaking or winning or moving a mountain. But I've known an entire life of men afraid that if the mountain moves, the woman will too. And we will. We have. And the American Civil Liberties Union has long been in the fight to have our backs, to shake the system, to be a force in a field that stretches centuries behind us. Remember Sojourner. Remember Dolores Huerta. Acknowledge the names erased. Remember when Patricia Arquette proclaimed, a win is fully a win when there is equality. A win is fully a win when it's for all women. Acknowledge the warriors, the more walk and less talk, the tenacity, the honorable badge on their hearts. Like when the ACLU challenged the EEOC to explore, they said, thank you for standing up for women's rights. Now do more. We give thanks for those who have said enough is enough, the Ava DuVernays who grow up to claim space, for Anita Hill and Dr. Ford, for all survivors ready to take the stand, for all survivors not ready, for every Insta post and hashtag, for those with the ability to fight beyond the screen, the keep going, the court wins, the accountability of TV dads, comedians, judges, producers. We give thanks for the women. I fight for all of us women. I make way for women of color women, underpaid women, Me Too women. We give thanks for the too often forgotten, the non-binary folk and trans women, for the cis men committed to protect us with their privilege. We give thanks for the victories we are not finished yet. Time is still up on claiming things you did not help build, like our bodies, like our worth. Too many girls experience pain from men in order to experience value, and we are confident in a day when the journey does not have to hurt. I decided I wanted to write. The same day I saw a writer with braids in a movie, and she so happened to be black, and she so happened to be resilient, and I happened to be surprised I could see a positive piece of myself on a big screen everywhere. There are women, from the farm workers to the directors, who are saying, dear sisters, we see you. It's time to demand ourselves back. And haven't we come a long way? Doesn't Tarana Burke remind us that we can prevail? Doesn't Laverne Cox? Doesn't Jane Fonda? The ACLU asks that you challenge the narrative. Aren't our daughters an unfinished story worth reading? Won't we keep going? Showing up in thousands with signatures and hearts bigger than any mountain we have already moved. Thank you.
Wow.
Literally the definition of hard act to follow, but it's all right. As that incredibly beautiful poem said, we are moving mountains, making way for all women. To make change, but also to foster space where we see each other and ourselves reflected back on screens in workplaces and in power. Our gender justice movements have opened the door this year for more successful advocacy and opportunities for justice. We've won battles to implement California's landmark sex education law that teaches about consent and respecting the lack of it. We also got legislation passed that mandates teaching sex ed in charter as well as public schools. We've kept pushing for more inclusive hiring practices in Hollywood because the absence of women storytellers leaves half our stories untold and skews our view of women beyond the screen. We've sued to stop pregnancy discrimination experienced by dock workers in Los Angeles and Long Beach. We've secured access to health care, gym and restroom facilities, and proper IDs for transgender women and non-binary Californians. We've sued to stop bosses from taking away workers' contraception coverage because they think women should not have premarital sex. We've sued and we made the Trump administration stop banning abortions and forcing young, pregnant immigrant women to have children against their will. This year, we made space for frank dialogue among survivors of the violence, harassment, and objectification so many of us endure on pandemic levels. It has also opened up space for some modicum of accountability. And this brings me to one of my heroes, the incredible Tarana Burke. Tarana has spent a lifetime making women and survivors seen and heard. Tarana started the Me Too movement in 2006 to help survivors of sexual violence, particularly Black women and girls from low-wealth communities, find pathways to healing and ways to use their power to lead system change and hold perpetrators accountable. Her movement's simple and radical power lies in letting us all know that we're not alone in our experience and we're not alone in making change. She gave the movement, with its now ubiquitous hashtag, its name and its soul. She helped launch Time's Up at the Golden Globes, and now she has the massive platform that she always deserved. Please direct your attention to the video screen.
Good evening. My name is Tarana Burke, and I am so honored to be accepting the Eason Monroe Courageous Advocate Award on behalf of the Me Too movement tonight. Unfortunately, I couldn't be there with you because I'm traveling, but I wanted to send a personal message to say how honored I am to even be named in company of these other honorees, in particular my sister, Alyssa Milano. This past year has been a whirlwind for most of us, and so much good has happened since Me Too's gone viral, but yet we're still in very trying times, scary times even. And please know that our work will continue as it always has, but we can't do it alone. We need those of you who care about justice and who care about humanity to see this as a social justice issue and to join us in the fight to end sexual violence, because it is ongoing and it touches every facet of life, every demographic, and across every issue of social justice. Organizations like the ACLU, who have been doing this for almost 100 years, are steadfast, and we hope to have as much of a legacy as they do. So again, I want to say thank you. We're deeply appreciative. I wish I could join you there tonight. Enjoy some chicken for me. And we appreciate you.
And in Tarana's absence, I'm honored to accept the Eason Monroe Courageous Advocate Award on her behalf. Thank you.
Presenting our next Bill of Rights Award, please welcome the Mayor of Los Angeles, Eric Garcetti.
Good evening, Los Angeles. Good evening to the city of angels. After this election, in the midst of this Veterans Day, after the shooting in Thousand Oaks, after the fires that are raging as we speak, somebody asked me yesterday how I feel. I said, I feel broken, but I feel strong. Strong because we live in this moment of contradiction and contradistinction where we have to sometimes feel that brokenness in us in order to feel the strength that lies beneath that. And why do we have that strength? Because of the ACLU. Here in this city, here in this state, and here in this country. Whether it's helping build a justice fund to defend immigrants regardless of their situation, whether it's strengthening the fact that in this city our police department will never participate in civil deportations, whether or not it's making sure that things like the public charge rule and the Trump administration's attempts to change international law with the asylum law, we have a defender here. Before I present this to Alyssa, I just want to say two quick things. My grandfathers, and I'm a strong, strong feminist. For the first time, we have a majority of women commissioners and half of our general managers. But just today, because of the narrative, let me talk about my grandfathers. One, Salvador, an undocumented immigrant who came as a baby in his mother's arms, my bisabuela's arms, 100 years ago over the border as a war refugee, who if today, maybe he would have been ripped out of his mother's arms, I wouldn't be here literally. but somebody who came here and who fought for this country as an immigrant volunteering for a country that still hadn't given him his citizenship. I remember you tonight, my grandfather, Salvador. And my other grandfather I want to mention is a man named Harry Roth, who I imagine, I don't know which hotel, but I imagine it was maybe this one, who in 1968, the son of immigrants from the Russian Empire, had built up one of the first unionized clothing factories here in Los Angeles, became tailor to the President of the United States, President Johnson, but who opposed the Vietnam War and had a decision to make of whether he would decide to speak up and lose his most important client or stay quiet and keep that honor. So he took out a full-page ad in the New York Times saying, President Johnson, please don't run for re-election, and got us out of Vietnam. And the ACLU of Southern California honored him as their Man of the Year. I stand here tonight in both of their and my grandmother's shadows. And I congratulate Constance and Kenya and Eva and Rita and Tarana for the incredible work that they have done. So I'm here to do an almost impossible job because the woman I'm here to introduce needs no introduction, you just heard. Alyssa Milano. We are so lucky to have her here tonight. You may not know this, but her family was evacuated because of the Woolsey fire that continues to burn the beautiful mountains of this town. At this moment, she could feel defeated. It would have been completely understandable for her to take tonight off, but we texted earlier and she insisted on being here to show her support for you, for the values of this nation, and for the ACLU. I admire Alyssa hugely, not only because she chose to be here tonight despite that tragedy that has overtaken her community, not just because she has used her voice to amplify and drive forward the Me Too movement, or because she fights for children who have been separated from their families and put in cages, or because I'm sure that one of the reasons that Brett Kavanaugh yelled so much during his hearings is that he could feel her piercing stare in the back of his head. We admire Alyssa because she is driven by a single abiding goal, building a better world for all of our children. That line has become a cliche, but for Alyssa, it's simply the truth. She believes that our lives won't count for much unless we can ensure that the next generation, for everybody, have every opportunity for happiness and fulfillment. She believes that ordinary people can all do extraordinary things. And she knows that change doesn't happen if we just sit back and wait for someone else to lead. She knows that the future doesn't just happen. It is shaped, and she has taken it upon herself to shape it. As she mentioned, when she was a teenager on the Phil Donahue show, it was where she was seated right next to Ryan White. I can remember that, this young boy who had contracted AIDS after a contaminated blood transfusion, and the stigma, if you can remember back at that time, was so enormous that his own middle school kicked him out. And when she leaned over and kissed him on his cheek, she demonstrated to a national audience that AIDS couldn't be transmitted through casual contact. She humanized him and this issue. That's the kind of Shiro we honor here tonight. So whether it's the ACLU, or Planned Parenthood, or GLAAD, or UNICEF, Alyssa's first question is always, what can I do? And so I think we can all think of no one more worthy of the Eason Monroe Courageous Advocate Award that she shares tonight than our friend and the woman you're about to welcome, Alyssa Milano.
Thank you. I want to thank Mayor Garcetti for being here, but also for his constant and steadfast leadership, especially during these very difficult times with these fires. So thank you. Thank you, Mayor. I'm so happy that you're my mayor. And also to Kenya, Eva, Constance, Rita, and my sister Tarana. I'm so honored to share this stage and this moment in time with such amazing women in Kenya. So our days started in 35,000 different ways. It was a Sunday, so some of us were home, some of us were at work, some of us were just getting back from a night shift. We spent the day with our kids or our friends or our partners or our parents or our coworkers. Some of us may have spent that day alone. We had different dreams, different worries, different resumes, backgrounds, experiences, and expectations. We may have even passed each other on the street without knowing on that day. But by the next morning, those 53,000 different days, those 53,000 women, those 53,000 different lives had come together in one movement, grounded in 2 words: Me Too. The hashtag Me Too has been used almost 20 million times in 85 different countries and has become so much more than just a hashtag. The words Me Too connected us through our pain, but they connected us to our power. Our predators could rely on the shield of their privilege, but finally we had protection too, in the form of each other. And I'll never forget where I was that Sunday. Inside my chest, my heart was on fire. It had been a bad week in a bad year to be a woman in this country. 2017 started in the worst possible way. A man who has not only been accused of sexual assault, but also bragged about it, became the president of the United States, the most powerful man in the country, arguably in the world. And then, even in the face of our hard-fought resistance, he proceeded to then spend the year trying to roll back our rights. So thank God for the ACLU. By the time October had rolled around and the Weinstein story broke, I was far from the only one who had had enough. And I kept asking myself this really simple question that I couldn't find an answer to, which was simply, why are people so horrible to women? So I spent my weekend reading article after article about prominent men accused of sexual assault and abuse. And on the one hand, I was glad that these stories were being written, but I didn't like the way they were being told. You see, the predator was always the protagonist, and the coverage was about his life, his career, how much he had to lose, not the women that he hurt or abused or driven from the workforce, not the women who had been ripped from society, their ideas and contributions lost to us all. The data tells us 1 in 3 women have experienced sexual advances from a man they work with. Really let that sink in. 1 in 3. And the news was just making it sound like this was only a Hollywood issue or maybe a Washington, D.C. problem, but you know, I knew from my own life that most of my friends had encountered sexual harassment, misconduct, or abuse, and I have very few friends who are actors. So when we say 1 in 3 women, we have to remember that we're talking about women who work in hotels and restaurants and farms and hospitals. They are our neighbors, our daughters, our sisters, our mothers. For many of these women, every single paycheck matters. And hiring an attorney is an expense that's so out of the question, and losing their job is not an option. And even if they do speak up, they run the risk that no one will believe them or that they will be ridiculed by the president. These are women who are targeted precisely because they are vulnerable, women whose abusers count on their silence. And I thought it was time that we hear their stories too. So on that Sunday, I got into bed with my daughter, and I watched her sleep, and I wept for her, and I vowed that her future would be different. And just then, serendipitously, my friend Charlotte Clymer sent me a message with an idea, a call to action first sounded a decade ago by the amazing Tarana Burke. And it was at once a small act of solidarity and a chance to illustrate the enormous scope of this plague in our society. If you had been sexually harassed or assaulted, reply with "Me too." If predators already had their platforms, this I hoped could be ours. These men who had demanded access to our bodies thought they themselves were untouchable. This, I hoped, could finally be the balance of power. So, by sharing our stories, by sharing our pain, stories in which we were the protagonists, we made clear that every single one of us was so much more than just a victim of someone else's actions. We were going to be the heroes of our own stories. We would be the agents of change. And yes, we want our abusers to know that they can and should be held accountable, but this is so much bigger than them. We want to end the entire spectrum of sexual misconduct once and for all, and we want to dismantle the systems that allowed these crimes to go on for so long. And as I see it, there are three things that must happen first: education, legislation, and activation. First, education. I'm raising 2 kids right now, a boy and a girl, and I think all the time about the forces that will shape the people that they become. And I know that they are learning about equality at home, and I try to make sure of that, but I also know that there are kids who aren't. So I think that this should be a part of every curriculum in every school. Lessons that absolutely everyone needs to hear, because respecting the value of every single human is a basic fundamental requirement of being part of society. And apparently there are a lot of people that still don't understand that. So we need to make sure that that message is reaching everyone. And second is legislation. It's time, in fact, it is way past time to pass the Equal Rights Amendment. To guarantee women's rights in the Constitution. And I cannot believe it's 2018 and we're still talking about this, but here we are. And we need other protections too. We need paid family leave, equal pay for equal work, Violence Against Women's Act, Domestic Workers' Bill of Rights in all 50 states. And even though there shouldn't be a law that equips hotel housekeepers with panic buttons, apparently we do. Chicago passed one after a survey of hospitality workers found that half had seen a guest expose himself. As one hospitality worker in California put it, they feel they have the right to the lady who cleans the room. I hope and I pray to live to see a world where everyone finally understands that you cannot do that to anyone ever, no matter how important you think you are. But in the meantime, let's make sure that these women have what they need to protect themselves. And we need to keep asking the right questions and demanding right answers, which brings me to activation. Can we please all commit to support companies and brands that support women? Please. Please do commit to doing whatever you can, using whatever power and platform you have to end this ridiculous status quo. And men, I am talking to you too. Do not doubt that there is place in this movement for you. In fact, what we are all working towards is impossible without you, so we need you on our side, not just because we're your wives and your daughters and your sisters and your mothers, but because we are human beings equally endowed with the same inalienable rights. So, please, let's move forward together. Overall, I am hopeful. I'm hopeful that the words "Me Too" have always been more than just a testament to our past. They are a prayer for our future. I'm hopeful that these stories won't be the norm for my daughter's generation, because there will be a new set of expectations for the men of my son's generation. I'm hopeful that eventually we'll stop hearing new voices say those words altogether. But this movement isn't going anywhere until our work is done. The words "Me Too" are going to keep echoing. They will reverberate off of every closed door. They will bounce off of every glass ceiling. We will feel their vibrations every time they hit a wall that stands between us. Me too. Me too. Me too. We're going to make sure that they echo until every door has been opened, until every glass ceiling has been smashed, until those walls that exist to keep us out have come down, and only once there is nothing left for those words to bounce off of, no barriers left to hold us back, will those echoes go silent, because that will mean we don't need them anymore. And that's what I'm praying for. And that's what I'm working every day for. And that's what the ACLU is working towards. For my daughter, for your daughter, for all of us. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. You know, I'm somebody who believes pleasure adds time to your life. And being here tonight, sharing the words I've heard all evening with all of you, has had to have added at least a month to mine. Maybe 6 weeks. All right, 7 weeks. But I'm here to present the glorious Ramona Ripston Liberty, Justice, and Equality Award to the glorious Rita Moreno. I don't know how many years I knew Ramona. Could be as many as 40. But there are a few people in my longish lifetime that I have admired and respected more. Ramona was fearless. She was fearless yet approachable. She was warm, and she was dedicated, and she was hot. I don't have the words to express how much I thought about that lovely woman. Ramona had the gift of motivating you to work for civil liberties. I heard of her death while I was in Florida campaigning for Andrew Gillum. Had I not known Ramona and spent so many years of my life under her influence, I wonder if I would have been in Florida at all. My life, I'm fortunate and proud to say, has been influenced by some remarkable women. Ramona, of course, was in the top tier among them. And the award in Ramona Ripston's name, tagged to the words liberty, justice, and equality, is a special honor bestowed by the ACLU of Southern California and goes to one of those women who has mattered so much to me. A recipient who not only exemplifies those qualities, but has fought for them, often at risk to her own career, her friendships, and even her personal safety. After Rita Moreno won the Academy Award in 1962, as you just heard, for West Side Story, she should have been offered romantic leads, starring roles, and cast as the great actress she effectively was. Instead, the parts she was offered, in which I treasure the fact that she rejected, were gang members, servants, and stereotypes. What that says about Hollywood in those years is an old story. By sticking to her principles, Rita Moreno almost became a has-been before she became and is now. But talent and character are survival skills. And Rita, who stood within 10 feet of Martin Luther King Jr. when he spoke his I Have a Dream speech, she has had them through her long, wonderful career. I'm thrilled to say that today she is co-starring, as you saw, in our new edition of One Day at a Time, which just wrapped its 3rd season on Netflix. And I could not be more excited that my company recently began production on a documentary of her life for American Masters. Like the person this award is named for, the glorious, as I said, Ramona Ripston. Rita is a fiery, committed, enormously gifted individual as well as a dear friend. One of only 15 people to win an Emmy, a Grammy, an Oscar, and a Tony, which made her an EGOT, she can now put the Ramona Ripston Liberty, Justice, and Equality Award on her mantle beside the others, and that will make her a REGOT. But crowded as that mantle may be now, Rita has to make room for 2 additional awards in recent years, the SAG Lifetime Achievement Award and the Kennedy Center Honors. So ladies and gentlemen and others, may I present the only SCREGOT that we know of, and one of the most fabulous performers I have ever known, let alone worked with. The one, the only, Rita Moreno.
Let's take a photo here. Oh, God, he's such a great old Jew. My husband was one, too. I can say that with experience. So you know what? There's very little that you actually know about me, so I want to do little points of light here and there. My mommy brought me to the U.S. after divorcing her husband, a philanderer in Puerto Rico. I was 5 years old. I don't know where she got the courage. She barely spoke English. Just a few months before, she'd gotten a job as a seamstress in New York City in a sweatshop and came back to get me. And we boarded this ship, which was called the SS Carabobo. And if you, see, a few people understand that. If you translate that name, it literally means the SS stupid face. Cara bobo. Not a good omen for starting a new life. The first few months in New York City, in the Bronx, were very, very difficult. It was freezing cold. I remember being in the bus on the way to an aunt's apartment where we were going to stay with 3 other families for a while, and asking my mother what happened to the trees because they had no leaves. And she said, "Oh, that's called winter." It was a very, very difficult time that first year. She took me to kindergarten, didn't speak a word of English because this was before the diaspora of Puerto Ricans to America. So there was nobody around for me to talk to or play with. And I also ran into my first experience with meanness and racial prejudice, boys calling me terrible names, like a name that in our show, One Day at a Time, we say, well, that doesn't mean anything anymore to kids, but it meant a lot to me then, still does. Spick and garlic tooth and pierced ear, names like that. And the only respite that I was able to find from that kind of turmoil in this brand new, so-called wonderful new life was a place called the Fire Escape, where I used to go and put the blanket on the steel rungs and put on a little radio. We had a table radio by the window of the fireplace, and I used to play music. And I used to listen to Celia Cruz and Miguelito Valdés. These were the Shakira and Pharrell Williams of my time. And I would lay back and look at those millions of stars and dream. I would dream of what I wanted. I wanted really, maybe because of my experience on the streets, I wanted desperately to be somebody, because that was going to change everything. And there was a song that I particularly loved, sung by a group called the Pied Pipers at the time. Some of you with hair my color, I see nodding. And it's a song that I always counted on to represent my yearnings. Dream when you're feeling blue. Dream, that's the thing to do. Dream while the smoke rings rise in the air. You'll find your share of memories there, so dream when the day is through. Dream, that's the thing to do. Dreams never are as sad as they seem. So dream, dream, dream. This is a great night for me. I am so moved to be in the company of such staggering talents and human beings. When Louis B. Mayer first launched my Hollywood career, I was 17 years old and so ecstatic that I practically floated right from his New York penthouse apartment where he met me for an interview to the MGM lot in Culver City, which is now Sony, which is what MGM was. And finally I thought, wow, I can live my dream. I will be a movie star. No longer Rosita Dolores Alverio, the Puerto Rican girl fleeing those mean streets with those terrible words being hurled at me. But in Hollywood, I soon learned it was much of the same, except it wasn't articulated. I had only changed my address. I got stuck, unfortunately, with playing all kinds of what I call dusky maidens of every kind of nationality, as long as they had brown skin. And there was one film in particular that I think sets a wonderful example of what it is that I went through in my time in Hollywood. If you think it's so bad now, it's pretty bad then too. I was doing a film called 7 Cities of Gold, and I played yet another Indian maiden who, when told by her white lover that he no longer has any use for her, throws herself dramatically off a cliff. And, you know, as I remembered the end of that scene, my long-term memory kicked in as I was recalling this story to tell you, which is quite extraordinary because long-term memory does not come to visit me too often anymore. I remember that at the end of that scene, her name is Ula. Ula is lying amongst the waves. And it just so happened on that day that millions of little stinging jellyfish were in the water. Needless to say, I was twitching. And the director said, "For Christ's sake, will you stop moving? You're supposed to be dead, you know." And I said, I'm really sorry, but there's a lot of jellyfish here and they're stinging me. He says, "Shut up and do as I say." Yeah, that's what he said in front of the crew, everybody. And there you have it. He didn't see me as a young actress trying to make her way in Hollywood, Rosita Moreno, now Rita Moreno. He saw me as Ula. And so those kind of experiences made me feel very, very much alone. And it made me feel as though I were the only person in the world suffering these indignities and humiliations. And I get the message loud and clear: shut up and be sexy. Well, it was a young man named Aryeh Nair. Aryeh Nair was involved at the ACLU at the time that I was I'm guessing about 20, 21. I don't remember how I met him. We may have even been on a date. I don't remember. But when I told him my stories, he said, "You know what? There's a meeting at a friend's house that I want you to come and attend. I think you may find this interesting." And it was a meeting of the ACLU at somebody's house. At the time, I had absolutely no idea there was an organization of people who stood up for people like me. And that meeting reminded me, it made me say, well, wait a minute. These people are saying that I have worth and that I have value and that I have rights. And I remember leaving that meeting without even knowing it at the time, an advocate. I was determined to find my voice. If they believed that I was worth something, well, hell, maybe I was, and it was cathartic. A real turning point. So, next month, on December 11th, I will be 87 years old, and for that I'm thrilled. No, please, no, don't do it, don't do it. I am thrilled to be 87. I mean, that's a swell thing. It means I'm still here. It makes me feel so young. And you, ACLU, are 95, and thank God you're still here proclaiming the worth and rights that belong to all the people of this nation. Today, God knows your voice is needed more than ever for the immigrant, the marginalized, the victim, and the refugee. So you can just count on me as an evangelist for the cause. I am Ula no more. I am Rita Moreno, and I have not shut up, and I will not shut up.
Okay.
And now please welcome back Connie Chang and Sherry Linewand.
What an evening. We are so happy you could come, and thank you for your support.
Please stay and share a special 95th anniversary cake and coffee as you wait for the parking valet line to get shorter. We look forward to seeing you next year. Good night, and stay safe.